Wow. You're early today, Nadezhda Alexandrovna, Varvara exclaimed in surprise as she opened the door to her mother-in-law. At the threshold stood a short woman in a grey coat, with neatly styled grey hair. Her eyes, usually bright and lively, today seemed dim. Am I not early? The mother-in-law asked quietly, shifting from foot to foot. What are you saying? Come in, of course. Maxim is at home in the living room working. Varvara helped Nadezhda Alexandrovna take off her coat and led her to the kitchen. Recently, her mother-in-law had been coming rarely, once a month at most. Usually she would call ahead and warn about her visit, but this time she showed up in the middle of the week without a call. Maxim. Varvara called. Mom is here. Hurried footsteps were heard. A minute later, a tall dark-haired man in a home t-shirt appeared in the kitchen. Mom, did something happen? The man immediately noticed his mother's unusual condition. No, nothing. Nadezhda Alexandrovna tried to smile, but it came out forced. I just stopped by to see how you were doing. The daughter-in-law put the kettle on and took out a pie she had baked the day before from the refrigerator. The mother-in-law was absent-mindedly stirring coffee in her cup, clearly gathering her thoughts. Mom, I can see that something is wrong, Maxim said gently, placing his hand on his mother's shoulder. And then Nadezhda Alexandrovna couldn't hold it in anymore. Large tears rolled down her cheeks. Svet. Sveta is in trouble, the woman said, sobbing. Varvara and Maxim exchanged glances. The daughter-in-law immediately understood what this was about. Sveta is Maxim's younger sister. 6 months ago, she opened a pastry shop with French desserts. Varvara had told her husband back then that the idea was risky. What happened to her? The man asked anxiously. The pastry shop, Nadezhda Alexandrovna wiped her eyes with a napkin. It completely went bankrupt, and she has huge loans and debts to suppliers. Almost 2 million rubles have accumulated. I told you so, the daughter-in-law couldn't help saying. Sorry, of course, but who in Pavlovsk needs those macarons for 500 rubles each? People here go to Magnet for pastries, and even then only on holidays. Maxim tried to stop his wife. No, you're right, the mother-in-law shook her head. I was afraid too, but Sveta was so passionate. She said she had calculated everything, that she would deliver orders to the regional center. The woman sobbed again. And now the collectors are calling, threatening her. It's a nightmare. The man tensed. Mom, you understand we don't have that kind of money right now. We are paying a mortgage ourselves. I know, son, I know. Nadezhda Alexandrovna took her son's hand. I didn't come for that. I've made a decision. The apartment that was left from Aunt Katia. I will sell it. The one on Lermontov Street? Maxim was surprised. You used to say you would never. Times change, the mother-in-law replied firmly. We have to save Sveta. She'll lose her mind if this continues. She hasn't slept at all for 2 weeks. I'm worried about her. What if she ends up in the hospital? Varvara bit her lip. A year ago, when she and Maxim had asked for help with the down payment, Nadezhda Alexandrovna had flatly refused to sell that apartment. It's my safety cushion, she had said then. And there's at least some rental income from it. Mom, maybe you shouldn't rush, the man asked cautiously. You should at least consult a lawyer. No, son, it's decided. The elderly woman stood up from the table. Tomorrow I'm meeting with a realtor. I just wanted to tell you so there are no secrets or misunderstandings between us. Varvara silently cleared the barely touched food from the table. Inside, everything was boiling, but she held herself back. At least have some tea, Maxim sighed. Another time. The mother-in-law headed to the hallway. I'm going, I have things to do. When Nadezhda Alexandrovna left and the door closed behind her, Varvara turned to her husband. Her face showed it clearly, now it was going to start. The wife slammed the cups into the sink and sharply said. No, did you see that? Her voice trembled with anger. A year ago that apartment was a safety cushion for us, and now suddenly it can be sold. Maxim sat down at the table, exhausted. Var, you understand the situation is serious. Sveta is in debt. And us, she interrupted. Are we living in luxury? Have you forgotten how we begged for help with the down payment? How I was almost on my knees in front of your mother. Oh, I can't sell the apartment, how will I live without those 30,000 a month, the woman mocked, pacing the kitchen nervously. We only asked for 800,000 back then, Varvara continued. And in the end we had to borrow from my parents, who can barely make ends meet themselves, but for Sveta there's always money for a one-bedroom apartment. Enough. Maxim slammed his hand on the table. Do you see how serious this is? Collectors are calling. I don't care about collectors, his wife burst out. Your sister is a grown woman, she got herself into this mess. Let her get out of it herself. She wiped away tears of frustration. You know what's most infuriating? We've been breaking our backs on this mortgage for 5 years. I can't even afford a simple blouse for myself. And she wanted to play businesswoman, French desserts, of all things. Maxim stood up and put his arms around her shoulders. Calm down. Maybe Mom will do the fair thing and split the money from the apartment between us and Sveta. Varvara let out a bitter laugh. You're so naive. You really think your mother will give us even a single coin? Every last ruble will go to your little sister. You'll see. You're being unfair to Mom. No, dear. She's the one being unfair, the woman pulled away. She always has been and always will be. For her, Sveta is the favorite daughter. And you are second place. Stop it, Maxim said angrily. Enough of this drama. Stop? Truth hurts, doesn't it? Varvara grabbed a kitchen towel and began furiously wiping an already clean countertop. Remember our wedding? Your mother kept saying, oh, Sveta will have better, I'll buy her a more expensive dress. And she did, even though we were already working and your sister was still studying. Maxim stayed silent. He had no answer. His wife was right. Fine, Varvara said after calming down a little. Your mother is your business. Just don't come crying later when she spends everything on your sister and tells us again, sorry, kids, I can't help you, but I love you very much. She left the kitchen, leaving her husband in thought. Maxim took a bottle of beer from the fridge and sighed heavily. He loved his mother and sister, but deep inside he understood that Varvara was right. As far back as he could remember, Sveta had always been first for his mother. And it would be the same now. A month later, everything happened exactly as the daughter-in-law had predicted. Nadezhda Alexandrovna sold the apartment for 2.5 million rubles and gave all the money to her daughter. She didn't even mention splitting it between the children. So, I was right? Varvara asked coldly when her husband told her the news. Maxim stayed silent. After that conversation in the kitchen, a month had passed, but the bitter aftertaste remained. He was grateful to his wife for not gloating or saying I told you so. But selling the apartment for Sveta was only the beginning of interesting events. Nadezhda Alexandrovna, who used to visit once a month, started coming more and more often, dropping by for dinner, or breakfast on weekends. I missed you, the mother-in-law would say, sitting at the table. At my age, loneliness is a terrible thing. Varvara would silently set the table, though everything inside her was boiling. She fully understood that after selling the apartment, her relative had lost her steady rental income. Maybe I can help you with cooking? Nadezhda Alexandrovna once offered. Thank you, I'm managing, the daughter-in-law replied coldly, and after that she became even more cheerful. Soon the mother-in-law started asking for money again. First small amounts, 3,000 to 5,000 rubles, supposedly until her pension came in. Can you imagine, medicines have become so expensive, the elderly woman lamented. And I can't do without them. Varvara stayed silent, but she carefully recorded every amount in a special notebook. By the end of the second month, Nadezhda Alexandrovna's debt had exceeded 30,000 rubles. Maxim, the wife couldn't hold back, do you understand what's happening? Your mother sold the apartment, gave all the money to Sveta, and now. So what do you suggest? Her husband asked tiredly. Refuse to help my mother? No, but, the wife hesitated. Maybe we could at least hint that it would be better to repay previous debts before asking for new ones. However, everything resolved itself. One evening, Nadezhda Alexandrovna came to them completely unannounced. I baked some pies, she said at the door, and I also wanted to ask. I can't pay the apartment bills. The utilities have become so expensive. That was the last straw. The daughter-in-law, who was cooking dinner, slammed the frying pan onto the stove. You know what, Nadezhda Alexandrovna? Varvara turned sharply to her mother-in-law. Let's be honest. Maxim, sensing the approaching storm, tried to stop his wife. Maybe not now? No. There were tears in the woman's eyes. How long are we supposed to stay silent? You sold the apartment, gave all the money to Sveta, even though a year ago you refused to help us with the down payment. Fine, that's your right. But now you come to us every week for free lunches and dinners, constantly asking for money, and you don't even think about repaying your old debts. What are you saying? Nadezhda Alexandrovna went pale. I am Maxim's mother. How can you accuse me over a piece of bread? I can. Varvara took a notebook from the drawer. Look, 32,000 rubles in 2 months. And that's only money, not even counting the groceries we spend on your visits. God, the mother-in-law exclaimed, throwing up her hands. Maxim, do you hear what your wife is saying? She writes down every bite. And I love you so much. You love us? Varvara smiled bitterly. Then start by paying back your debts, and then we'll talk about love. I can't believe my ears. Repeat that. I said, return the money you owe. We don't need your love. Varvara did not mince words with her mother-in-law. Nadezhda Alexandrovna turned to her son. Maxim, are you really going to let her speak to your mother like that? All three froze. Varvara held her breath. A lot was at stake in their family right now. Maxim slowly raised his eyes to his mother and answered firmly. Sorry, Mom, but Varvara is right. We're barely making ends meet ourselves, we're paying the mortgage, we bought a car, we need furniture, and now this. Nadezhda Alexandrovna's voice trembled. So you too? I never thought my own son would reproach his mother for a piece of bread. No one is reproaching you, the man replied firmly. But everything has a limit. You created this situation yourself. Nadezhda Alexandrovna silently gathered her pies and looked sadly at her son. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect this from you, especially from you, my son. She headed toward the exit, but in the hallway she turned around. Don't worry. I won't come again. The door slammed shut. The couple remained alone. I'm sorry, Varvara said quietly. I didn't want it to turn out like this. Maxim silently hugged his wife. You did the right thing. It should have been said a long time ago. From that day on, they only saw Nadezhda Alexandrovna on major holidays. She never repaid the debts, but she also never asked for new ones. Varvara was satisfied. Finally, clear boundaries had been set in their family. Better rare but sincere meetings than constant visits with double intentions. You know, she said to her husband one day, I didn't do it out of malice. It's just that someone had to tell the truth. The man nodded in agreement. He understood that sometimes you have to go through conflict for relationships to become healthy, perhaps not as close as before, but honest.